Hi, I'm Bob Costas, and we're talking now with Michael Husain, the director of a very fine film that I was lucky enough to be a small part of called The Waiting Game. And it's the story of Scott Tarter, an Indianapolis attorney who, for nothing at all, did it all pro bono and stayed at it for years and years, tried to get recognition and some sort of pension payments for ABA players who had helped build the league and in turn helped build basketball up to a higher level because so much of what the ABA was about, including many of its players, who went on to star in the NBA, and also a style of play that the ABA affected and that the NBA eventually absorbed. The ABA is very important in the history of basketball. And so, too, therefore, are many of the players left behind who didn't make extravagant salaries and in many cases didn't have any savings to fall back on or pension plans and were unable to cover such basic things as perhaps funeral expenses or medical expenses. This is what this film is about, the long and noble fight to get these players the recognition and some of the financial assistance. And assistance is the wrong term. Finances they had coming to them, which they had earned. So Michael Husain is the director of The Waiting Game, which can be seen on The Realist. What made you want to do this film, Michael?
So you mentioned Scott Tarter and the Dropping Dimes Foundation, and I met Scott, and he explained to me what was going on in terms of their fight to try and get the ABA players the recognition that they deserved. And it was noble, and the longer I spent following Scott and the work they were doing, the more emotional it became for him and therefore for us as filmmakers. It I learned a lot in doing this film. One, I don't think I recognized the tremendous impact that the ABA had on what is the modern game of basketball, professional basketball. I had no idea that most of the fun of the ABA came, or I had no idea that most of the fun of the NBA came out of the ABA. That
A
the
lot of it.
NBA, yeah, the sort of more of its the origin story of the NBA is actually the ABA, and so and that goes from the pace of play and the fun 3 point the 3 point shot is obviously a huge one, and its embrace of halftime shows and just the entertainment value of the sport, and so that was the fun part. And then realizing that this injustice had happened to the players after the two leagues combined in 1976. And, I grew up in Indiana, and I remember those Pacers. And, it was really the only taste of a championship that this area has had in a long, long time. And so the fact that those players could be at all struggling was stunning to me, um, and a little bit offensive. Like we needed to get something done for them, and so we were really lucky to be able to follow the work of the Dropping Dimes Foundation, meet some of the players who were either in need of help or wanted to help those that they considered their ABA brothers to get the help they needed. So it was really kind of a privilege to be able to do it, and it very much became a labor of love.
Well, we see the waiting game behind you over your left shoulder,
Yes.
and across your chest, we see the realist. What is the realist?
So the Realist is a platform to promote and show, create a home for independent documentaries that have, for whatever reason, struggled to find a home on the major streaming services. Um, I'm a big believer in film festivals, and there are a ton of films that play at film festivals that are really strong films. And independent filmmaking distribution has really become very difficult since the pandemic. And so there are all these great stories, great films out there made by really accomplished filmmakers that are not coming to your algorithmic feed. And so
Mhm.
we felt that there was a need for in the independent filmmaking community to create a place where they could be celebrated. And so basically, if no one was going to show the Realist because it's a story, and one of the things independent film does really well is hold powerful interests accountable and asks tough questions. And so sometimes that means you don't get the favorable look at us from a streaming service. And so we wanted to say, well, if you won't let us in to the party, then we'll create our own. And that's what The Realist is. So the Waiting Game will be the first film, the flagship film on The Realist. And then each week there will be a new independent film chasing a new story with really really interesting outcomes. And you might have your perspective challenged. You might the next week you might meet an interesting character that you never would have otherwise. There's a lot of things that are surprising and fun and necessary about independent filmmaking, and so that's what The Realist is for.
Why is this film not just interesting, but important? Speaking of the waiting game.
I think that it is important as a piece of human justice and dignity that happens to be cloaked in the clothing of sports. It's these are men who created tremendous value where they worked, and you will hear stories over the course of time where people worked for a company, they built tremendous value underneath it, and then in the boardroom there's a merger or some sort of a corporate acquisition, and those factory workers essentially are left
Yeah.
out. And so that's kind of what happened to the ABA guys. They built this thing that was really fun and very valuable, and it grew, um, helped grow the NBA into what it is today. And many of them were just left out. And so it's a story that happens in a capitalist society. I'm a capitalist. I think it's great, but there are gaps. There are little creases where people can fall through, and that's kind of what happened here. So I think it's important in that regard.
So many ABA players, ABA alums, went on to star in the NBA. Dr. J is obviously one, George Gervin, Artis Gilmore, Bobby Jones with the 76ers, George McGinnis, on and on. But then there were other players, not just run-of-the-mill players, not just average players, and they deserve their dues as well, their full due of appreciation. But there were great players who, because sports careers are generally short, might have begun at the very beginning of the ABA, played the whole 9 years of the ABA, and they were either done or they were toward the tail end of their careers, so they had a couple of years in the NBA but past their prime. But they were genuinely great players that even avid basketball fans know very little about. Matt Calvin, Roger Brown, Freddie
Yes.
Lewis. I'm leaving guys out.
Mhm. Yeah, Louis Dampier,
Yes.
it's in the Hall of Fame, and but 8 9 years in the ABA, these guys were tremendous. And if you and that's one of the things about the ABA is because it didn't have a national television contract, and
Mhm.
they were underseen, um, kind of
Yes.
in some ways like independent films. They were very high quality and underseen, and so we want the Realist to be a place where we're going to give them the platform finally. And I think the Waiting Game is it was trying to do two things. It was, yes, trying to tell that justice story, but it was really to give a moment to these ABA guys that they deserved.
Mhm. I feel that those of us who were involved in the ABA, and my involvement is simply that I happened to begin my career the first 2 years with the last 2 years of the NBA, 74, of the ABA rather, 74 through 76. But there's a real kind of fraternity and brotherhood there. If you were part of the ABA players and coaches, people who worked in front offices, we're all ABA guys, no matter what else we may have done. Dr. J was a huge star in the NBA, but he's an ABA guy. I did a few other things after that. But to all the guys in the ABA, when we cross paths, I'm an ABA guy because we had a pride in what you were alluding to. The quality to us was evident, but it was under-recognized and underappreciated. And that put a little bit of a righteous chip on our shoulders. Now, some of us came out just fine, but then it was our responsibility to carry the torch for those who were left behind, either in recognition or financially left behind. And the person who did the most for that was Scott Tarter, who did it utterly selflessly, 100% selflessly, just because he was a fan of the ABA and he believed in pursuing the justice that eventually he was able to get a measure of for these ABA alums. And that's the story of the waiting game.
It is. We could not have done the film without Scott and the work of the Dropping Dimes Foundation. There were three guys. There was Scott was the guy who was doing the lead negotiations with the league and really kind of carrying the torch in the last couple of years. But it was co-founded by Dr. John Abrams and a third person, Ted Green, and they they were completely selfless. They did. You needed somebody to make the film work. It wasn't just that there were these ABA guys who you wanted to like, and it wasn't just
Yeah.
that there was a sort of inertia to the NBA recognizing the issue. You needed somebody to care about, and Scott was that character. He just was. Dogged doesn't do him justice. He was
Hmm.
relentless, and it reveals itself very much in the film. But I think it's a testament to him that he has since been nominated for consideration into the inclusion into the Basketball Hall of Fame for the work that he did on behalf of these players. That's
Hmm.
extraordinary.
Couple of things for those who may not be aware. The Dropping Dimes Foundation wasn't just about the effort to get the ABA players some sort of recognition in terms of appreciation, but also financial settlements. But Dropping Dimes is an organization founded by Scott Tarter, which comes to the aid of former ABA players, quite apart from the pension benefits and quite apart from the central story of the waiting game. Some guy can't pay his medical bills. Well, Dropping Dimes steps in. Somebody can't pay for their dad's funeral. Their dad played in the ABA. They step in with that sort of thing. And some of us have helped with fundraising and whatnot to keep Dropping Dimes funded well enough that they're able to step in where needed. So that's a separate part. The long legal fight and negotiations with the league that Scott Tarter waged, that's the central part of the waiting game. But the Dropping Dimes Foundation predates that and postdates that for the benefit of an ever aging group that loses members by the year. Just do the math, look at an actuarial table. But many of them are still around, and the Dropping Dimes Foundation works for their benefit.
Very good. Very important point.
So, where can people find this? They say, wait, I want to see this.
Yeah.
Tech, they're not going to the theater necessarily to see it.
Right.
So, where do they find it?
The one place that you'll be able to find the waiting game is on the Reelist, which the URL is realist.stream, Reelist.stream.
Hmm.
You'll be able to Google it and find it. It'll be on Roku and Apple TV, and there's an
Yeah.
app for Realist. So it'll be everywhere that you watch your TV. And it will be, again, a part of a collection of important documentaries, enlightening documentaries that I think people will really, really enjoy. But The Realist is where the waiting game can be found.
Michael, thank you. It's a fine film, and I hope it is seen by as many people as possible.
Thank you.